Warning, this review will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen this film, go watch it first. But if you decide to go on regardless and not heed this warning, it's your own fault, so do not blame me in any capacity. Two films down, and the Equestria Girls franchise is starting to build a bit of a reputation for itself. A reputation built on solid yet unspectacular films. The fact is, this time, however, for its third incarnation, there was actually hype going into it. And it was simply down to one primary reason: Sci-Twi. The post-credits scene of Rainbow Rocks set the wheels in motion as the human universe's version of Twilight Sparkle became the centre of attention and the main plot driver for friendship games, and it had to balance the eponymous games and Sci-Twi's character development to ensure the plot could, for the first time in this series' run, at least in my opinion, have some stability and consistency. Now, Sci-Twi may represent the personality of Pony Twilight's embryonic infancy within the Friendship is Magic series, but outside of that, they had mostly a clean slate to write the wrongs within the filmography to ensure that the character worked. When I say a clean slate, I mean wiping the table completely and utterly spotless and then revisiting ideas from the prior two films and executing them like they actually gave a damn. You know, taking the Twilight character that should have been in the first film, and then taking that and mashing it together with the competition that should have been in the second. And honestly, in my opinion, doing that ensured they could make no mistakes. And on top of that, they're expanding the lore of this universe out to where Friendship is Magic does not have such a stern influence on it. That is a good thing. In fact, to say that is a good thing is an understatement, because this film manages to find firm ground quickly, and it runs to the hills with a clear idea of what it wants to do, which in comparison with the other two, is a massive relief. From the get-go, as a result, by introducing Sci-Twi, expanding on the world outside of Canterlot High, making the competition feel worth its time, and ensuring it all flowed well with everything making sense, ensured that for the first time in this franchise's history, I believe they've succeeded in creating a comprehensive story. Gone are the stark and inconsistent tone and pace shifts. Gone are the loose ends in continuity. Gone are the needless, cringy moments, and significantly, gone is the rushing into the plot off the bat without any significant vision to direct it to its goal. The story of Sci-Twi's emotional blackmail and personal turmoil, combined with the Canterlot High girls' desire to understand their magic, created a nice balance of plot conflicts to drive the story with, especially as it took its time in unveiling everything it had on offer, while the action of the games themselves offered a nice backdrop for them to work off of. It took the first film's narrative structure and did it with more polish and finesse, making it feel more natural and at home with itself, containing highs and lows that were remarkably consistent, especially thanks to the superb tone balance on show. Now, while we did get a decent amount of laughs, it was the drama and overhanging tension that screamed out of this film, making it feel more serious than its predecessors. And when you couple in the adult themes of blackmail, corruption, isolation, and social and class discrimination alongside the sporting aspects of winning and losing by truthful or unethical means, it meant you have a slice of life drama and sports film combining together quite spectacularly in a mature way. And on top of that, it all works to where everything you see on screen feels like it has ramifications and a purpose. Nothing felt shoehorned or out of place, and while a common complaint is that this story is extremely linear, it's a good thing that it is this way, as the franchise until now never made a linear plot feel worth its weight before. The first film didn't utilise all at its disposal to make it feel like it was worth the time, while the second overcomplicated itself to where it crashed badly. This film rectified their mistakes and shines brightly due to its own due diligence, and I could not be happier with that. On my initial viewing of this film, having the games at Canterlot High seemed a little bit redundant, as I believed having it at Crystal Prep would aid plot depth, character progression, and honestly the benefit of the whole film as a general feature. The fact is though, when you look at what we actually got, to have this film do so well by not doing that is a testament to the quality of work that Josh Haber and his crew did to ensure that the simple things and the simplicity of the story and everything in between managed to come together. And I can't fault them for that, really, can I? The fact is, I was hoping that the writing would follow in similar ilk of the story's benefits. Unfortunately, to be the bearer of bad news, it didn't go as smoothly as I'd hoped it would. Before I go into those negatives, I have to talk about Sci-Twi one more time, as the execution of the shy and socially awkward yet driven protagonist of this film is one that I love, as seeing the reluctant and reclusive side of Twilight felt surprisingly new, as we'd not seen it in such a long time in the main show, and it was helped even more with the nerdiness jacked up to 11 as she understood what a world outside of her studies looked like. It was a gradual, fraught and mature walk in her shoes as she dealt with the opposing personalities and contrasts between her and another school's life. For me, she was a walking character development machine, as almost every interaction she had rammed home something for her to learn or make note of, resulting in a character that by the film's end I felt proud of, even though she had to be corrupted by magic to fully understand the depth of what she still had to learn, which meant that other films could be made to deal with those. Now, Sunset Shimmer once again proved her development was worth seeing, as she finally blossomed into a caring, smart, and incredibly in-your-face individual who keeps providing emotional and intense weight for every appearance that she has, carrying scenes well with every interaction, while both of these girls supplied the goods with great voice acting to boot from Rekha Swashe and Tara Strong respectively, as you would expect. However, that is where this category's positives come to an abrupt end. Because while the new setting of Crystal Prep is there to expand this universe's lore and create new characters, seeing it be highlighted as this snooty and ultra-competitive private school demeaned it from the start, while disappointing as we barely got to see any of it. We understand its moral and social codes, but don't fully get to see anything else outside of its sheer thin facade, meaning the characters within it outside of Sci-Twi are about as bland as you see. And that is epitomised by the work of one Principal Cinch, who may hands down be one of the most one-dimensional and poorly constructed examples of a hate sync trope that I have ever seen. In fact, resident MLP reviewer and writer for Unleash the Fanboy Daniel Alvarez called her the worst antagonist, one so cartoonishly evil that he had to question what he was watching, and I have to fully agree with that, as a film grounded in quite a decent amount of realism and the occasional bit of magic was slowly undone by her over-the-top musings. Now, to have her blackmail a student into competition is frankly absurd and unrealistic, and on top of that, any attempts at depth with her are left at the door to let her uncompromised evil come through at every single turn, especially when even her derisions over cheating by Canterlot High are seen as irrational. Not just that, it was noted that she has an allergy to dogs, but that was completely forgotten about moments after it was mentioned in one of this film's only continuity blunders. Now, despite having the motive to be relevant, it was completely ignored. And the thing is, Cadence tells Twilight to change her shirt for fear of setting off said allergy, yet we never actually see that she does this, which calls into question how in the damn office Cinch isn't sneezing all over the place, as well as a now talking Spike being stuffed into a locker with her coming by not long afterwards. How the hell did that not set it off? It's ridiculous and really undoes what little promise this character had, and her sole position to force the conflict forward showcases how flawed she is, as she convinced Twi to unleash the magic only to run away and disown the monster she created, while her eventual comeuppance wasn't even satisfying, in the contrary, as she got to walk away with her pride still intact despite a verbal mauling by all, even Dean Cadence, who didn't show much difference from her MLP counterpart as well, while the Shadow Bolts, despite being well designed and visually memorable, had their names thrown at you and completely forgotten about by the time the film came to an end, as you struggled to remind yourself of them. Now, sure, their personalities are somewhat memorable in the context of the film, but are so tone-deaf and flat as supporting antagonists that they don't have any depth to them at all. They were seen as disposable, which makes sense given Cinch's motives, but it rams home how outside of Sci-Twi and Sunset, every other character in this film does not matter. Yes, even the main five do not have much of a say in this film, taking a supportive role too, as Sunset takes centre stage on her side of the school divide. This is a two-character film. And while they helped heal the severe bruising that the other characters gave the writing category, it definitely doesn't come home looking its best when all is said and done. To have the writing support itself on 2 character performances alone isn't really that great, because seriously, the story does so well in trying to envelop you in this tense, dramatic, and brilliant battle between 2 sides of social divides. And it's great! Unfortunately, to have so little emphasis on the characters at hand despite having too many to count really means that while it's got a nice package, the contents of it don't really stack up. And that's disappointing on a very, very big level. And it made me worry that the animation, the music, and the morals and messages were going to struggle on equal footings. Then again, knowing this franchise record on all of them, anything is technically possible. The music this time had only 6 songs to work with. The good news is that all but one of them were fantastic. Friendship Games is the heaviest rock track the franchise and the show has ever done. Akadeka, through sheer catchiness, got through the games while not having to compromise on time. The CHS Rally song was a sequel to the Cafeteria song in its pomposity and catchiness. Right there in front of me is a great reflective credits song, and what more is out there is a sublime ballad. Now, the only one of these songs that manages to not make the grade was Unleash the Magic, and that's because of the soulless performance by Principal Cinch, who compounded her cartoonish evil by singing the lead of this villain song. Now, while I love the Shadowbolt's harmonies and Twilight's final verse vocal performance, the prior menial and subdued Cinch performance ruins it outright, despite fitting the creepy and dark vibe that it needed. It was fine, just nowhere near the rest of this film's catalogue that was put on show. And the background music, to give it even more promise, was also just as varied as the songs we got on show here, as it was tense and very atmospheric, complementing the dramatic tone that the film had set for itself perfectly. Meaning, outside of that one song, I can say the musical bounty for this film was nigh on flawless. Following on directly from that, the animation, unlike the rest of this series' filmography, and much like the story of this one film, was a gradual and strung out process that started out quite minimalistic in its visual flourishes. If you discount the bombastic and incredibly awesome title sequence, but hey, you need something to jack up everybody's excitement. But from there, the new setting of Crystal Prep, its student designs, and stunning uniform took center stage right up until the competition started, with portals, increased musical number editing and graphical contributions, as well as action set pieces in the triathlon, built visual tension until it all exploded with a final act, as Midnight Sparkle and the crossover between Human World and Equestria came through with a stunning groundbreaking effect, which is unbelievable. However, that wasn't the end, as it was capped off in even more spectacular fashion by the Midnight Sparkle and Sunset Shimmer battle and the ethereal climax to it, to really make this film progress in more ways than one. It bided its time to show you all it had, getting more over the top as it went on, not blowing its load early or simplifying the content of its visuals to one major section of the feature. Now, sure, there was a lack of transitions, and utilising the already tired Cantlot High as a location was a major miscue, but it wasn't big enough to shy away from the steady but surefire job the animators had done to have the visuals wow. And while I've been quite positive on the film's stylistic elements, the messages and morals did not have the same luxury. Now, I'll give credit for these 3 morals on show getting resolutions that reflected themselves with aplomb, but they weren't the focus of this film's story and narrative's time, as the games and Sci-Twi's development took center stage, while these just sat aside and waited their turn to come through. Now, the first moral surrounding how power can corrupt and be harmful was exemplified by how horrible Cinch's motives were in the broader scheme of things, making winning not feel justified if you treat others like garbage to achieve it. Not only did it make Cinch's character get redeemed to somewhat of an extent, it was also the only new one on display, as the second about understanding that friendship is key to social development, and the third about understanding how to deal with your problems without someone else's help were taken directly from the prior 2 films, making them really feel quite subdued and tame. They limit this film's appeal on doing some of its hard work, and in reflection, it doesn't feel quite as complete as it should have, despite a lot of hard work being on show for all to see. While the analysis of this film ends on quite a bittersweet note indeed, I am very happy and pleasantly surprised with how this film performed. Now, you could say that I am overpraising this film because it managed to do what, honestly, the first films should have done, but failed to do so. And you would be correct. But the fact is, little things do go a very long way to change one person's opinion on something. So, as a result, I feel that my justification is very well deserved, and it honestly is enough to make me satisfied about what I've seen here. In my opinion, this is the most divisive film within the Equestria Girls filmography, with many opinions splitting on its quality. Some call it fantastic, while others call it a wasted opportunity and a disappointment. Now, on my initial viewing, I was in that latter category, as I believe the film left me mulling over a lack of risks taken by it. However, Josh Haber learnt from the mistakes of this film's predecessors and tried to create something the least bit complicated to ensure simplicity would achieve clarity. And on analysis, it showed for the most part to have worked, as a human pwn's film finally got a grip on what it wanted to do in terms of story and narrative and stuck to its guns, deciding on a purpose, pace and tone, and sticking with it, while awesome music and great animation gradually built up its stylistic and structural repertoire at the same time, to a point where even as a basic filmmaking exercise, and especially in animation goes, it was difficult to fault. The film set out needing to validate the risk of undercomplicating itself by making a safe, preppy and dramatic film that set its universe in stone for future installments, rather than taking bold new steps just for the sake of it. And by Job, did they accomplish it while still housing some problems with the writing and messages, to come away from this not completely unscathed. And while as a casual watching experience you may feel that you're being pulled along in the driving seat of a very linear ride, however it meant to do so, as it wore its reasonings and emotions on its sleeve, making them hit that much harder, especially under analysis. It strived to fix the problems of the prior films this series had, and achieved it. They created a film that was entertaining and thought-provoking, all while visually and audibly stunning for the most part. Now, all it needed was some finesse and a spit of polish to complete the writing and message puzzles, and if they managed to do that, we'd be looking at a surefire success story, but instead, we are left mulling over inevitably the mistakes that it made along the way. Now, while I can understand that this film should have done a lot more with its concept, I'm pleased with what we got, because I shouldn't have to think very hard about a kids' film at the end of the day, a kids' animated film as well on top of that, and have that same film and its production staff come to that exact conclusion alongside me as a viewer and a critic. It's very assuring and shows that when we both strive to get what we want, we end up getting it, even though it wasn't wholly perfect by either of our standards. Now, it did enough to warrant my praise, and I hope that they felt the same coming out of it too. We got a good, solid film that builds more intrigue for what is still to come. Now, it may not have been perfect, it still had some mistakes, but I could not have asked for more, even if something better could still have been taken from what was put before us. Overall, Friendship Games scored a total of 17 out of 25, which is a B-. In closing, I have to say that my expectations were taken to another level with this one, because I had ideas of where I thought Equestria Girls and Rainbow Rocks would initially be when I reviewed them on analysis. The fact is, both of those films completely upturned my expectations and went in completely different directions from where I expected them to be. As for this one, I believed it would stay firmly rooted in promise, yet mired in disappointment. I felt it did okay on a casual initial viewing, but upon analysis it made me realise that this is actually pretty damn good. And on that front, it made me realise that while I wanted this film initially to give me something grand, complex, and something different from the norm, while we did get that to some degree, what I'm happy with is that it managed to tell itself a good story with unabashed honesty. It didn't have to throw complexity at my face to make it work, because sometimes all you need to do is just have an animated film that does its job. And sometimes I feel in the modern day of complex, varied, and out there animation that, well, we need something more bare bones and simple. And I'm happy that this film managed to do it, and did it quite well, to make me feel relatively positive going into the next one. While I'm left in a good frame of mind going into the final film review, I am actually quite worried about whether Legend of Everfree could top Friendship Games. Now, on a casual scale, I loved Legend of Everfree, do not get me wrong, but episodes that I've loved in the past, upon the analytical weight of my rating scale, have ended up faltering. So, it has the potential to fall flat on its face. Whether it does, however, is something up for debate, and something that will only be found out if you end up watching what comes up next. Because if it manages to do so, we could be in for something quite sublime indeed. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people watching. This has been the Friendship Games film review, part of Equestria Girls month for the CC Network. And I will see you all next time.